Welcome to Please Me, the podcast bringing you bold conversations and big clit energy. I'm Eve, your host, on a journey from trauma to sexual liberation. Join me and my guests as we dive into conversations around orgasm equality, self-love, body positivity, and essential sexual education. Let's reclaim pleasure and close the orgasm gap one empowering conversation at a time. Last week on the Please Me podcast, I chatted with award-winning author Amy Riley about the power of aphrodisiac superfoods to boost libido, energy, and sexual health. From foods that ignite desire to those that enhance your sex life, it was a delicious episode, so you won't want to miss it. I'm also excited to share that I'm still in the running for the Fab Over 40 competition, raising awareness and funds for the National Breast Cancer Foundation. Please check out the show notes for the link and vote daily to help me claim the cover of New Beauty magazine. Your support means the world. Please Me is for mature audiences. Sit back, relax, and surrender to the pleasure of Please Me.
They don't know about consent. They don't know that they have a right to say no, even if they're married. They don't know that they have a right to their own pleasure. They don't know that masturbation is a great way for us to learn about our bodies and ourselves and what we want, because what one partner wants may not necessarily be what another partner wants. And exposing and normalizing those kinds of situations for people is so important.
Hello, and welcome to Please Me, the podcast that aims to destigmatize conversations about sex and sexual health by turning the sheets into our classroom. I am so excited today to welcome Christina Braver to the show. Christina is a steamy, contemporary, small-town romance novelist, and I am excited to hear all about her newest book. She has written 7 books, and this is her 8th book that will be coming out in October. And as we record this today, it is September 30th. However, it will be coming out right around the time that her novel is going to be coming out. And she writes about sex tips and sex positive themes in her books, which is so exciting to me. And so I'd like to welcome you to the show today. Welcome, Christina. How are you today?
Thank you so much for having me. I am so happy to be here. I am thrilled to talk about this topic. I love to talk about this topic. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. I want to start with something that we chatted about before. How have romance novels changed? And what does the word steamy specifically mean when you're referencing a romance novel?
Great question. You hear sweet, steamy, spicy, erotica. A lot of those terms are commonly used to describe the heat level of the romance novel. Typically, sweet is going to be what also referred to as clean, meaning no sex on the page, oftentimes no sex even referenced. Then we have what's called closed door, which is where there is sex mentioned, but it's not on the page. And then you have open door, where there's sex on the page, you're in the room, you're experiencing the emotions and the actions of the main characters in the story. And so you'll find in open door, things like steamy, spicy, erotica are used to describe the heat level of what you can expect. Some books called steamy just have an open door sex scene that's maybe minimally described. Other books that are called steamy are going to have all the words and you're going to be in the room. You're going to be feeling the feelings. Language is going to be explicit. So it's good to know. Whenever you're talking about steamy romance, it's good to ask some questions about how explicit the scenes are, that kind of a thing. If you think that's something that you're going to need, you wouldn't be comfortable with if you wouldn't be comfortable with all levels of explicitness, then you'll want to take a look at the author or reviews or things like that. How romance novels have changed. So couple of big things in history. We all remember the romance novels with the damsel in distress on the cover, on a horse with the guy with the wavy hair, right? And that's what a lot of people think about when they think about romance novels. They think about that sort of cover, that sort of experience. In the early 2000s, e-readers were introduced to the scene, and now you could read a book on your Kindle or your e-reader that nobody knew what you were reading. romance novels exploded. The readership of romance novels exploded because now you can read a romance novel on the bus or on the plane and nobody knows what you're reading. So it was no longer this, for lack of a better expression, dirty little secret that people read at home. So that expanded the readership. And then in 2019, there was a huge shakeup in the Romance Writers of America, one of the largest, if not the largest, romance writing organization around racism. And what that did is it sparked a lot of accomplished writers to go to self-publishing. It demanded that BIPOC voices and more diverse voices be included in stories. No longer were we writing predominantly for women, white women in particular, straight women. Now you have characters of all genders, all orientations, all ethnic and historic backgrounds. So you have quite a bit of diversity now in romance novels. And the goal is for anyone to be able to pick up a particular romance novel and see themselves in that story. So romance has become so diverse and different in recent years that it really is something for everyone.
I love that. And I love inclusion because obviously I am part of the BIPOC community. I'm a Latina woman. And so having that representation is so important in so many different aspects of our lives. And also, too, in the books that we read, we want to be represented. So I appreciate that was like a revolutionary thing that happened in the book writing world, and that now there is more inclusion. And I know that you try to include various types of characters into your books as well. And we talked a little bit about that. I'd love to know what you think sets you apart as a writer.
I think what sets me apart is how much effort I put into providing those sexy tips in the sex scenes. And I was in another interview once and not that long ago, and the person said, "Do you really think you're telling people stuff they don't know, they don't already know?" And I said, "I'm not delusional. There is a lot of people that know a lot about sex, but there's also a lot of people that don't know a lot about sex." And I actually spoke with a friend of mine who is in the medical field recently, and she said, "Oh, you're absolutely telling people stuff they don't know." There's a huge population of people who didn't receive quality sex education, don't know where the clitoris is, don't know that you can't watch porn, that porn is such an unrealistic example of what sex and sexual pleasure and how to pleasure someone else, what that reality is like. Porn is such an inappropriate, or just, it's a fantasy, complete fantasy land. It serves a purpose, but it is not sex education. And so people are
Hallelujah to that.
Hallelujah to that. Amen. Yes. People are turning to diverse resources, hopefully. And one of those things is romance novels. And I'm proud to be part of the movement to make romance novels more not sex education, but maybe sex education adjacent. Things like, if we had heterosexual couples, men who are interested in their pleasure, in their partner's pleasure, almost as much or more so than their own. Men who don't know everything and are asking their partners.
Hallelujah to that too.
Hallelujah to that too.
I didn't know I was going to church today.
Amen. Yeah, it absolutely. But don't get me distracted. I feel so passionate. And this is loosely tied to my faith in a way. But I think it's so important for us to present those stories. And I think that certainly there are people that are very educated about sex and sexuality. And then there are people who their only exposure to sex has been maybe their marriage bed. They don't know about consent. They don't know that they have a right to say no, even if they're married. They don't know that they have a right to their own pleasure. They don't know that masturbation is a great way for us to learn about our bodies and ourselves and what we want, because what one partner wants may not necessarily be what another partner wants. And exposing and normalizing those kinds of situations for people is so important. And I think it's certainly what sets my books apart. There are other books out there like mine, but I'm proud to say that I think my books really are a part of that movement and put that at the forefront. That character-driven story. Let's talk about the characters' wounds and where they are, and then how does that impact their sex life? And what can we learn from those two characters struggling for a healthy sex life as real people?
I love that. And I know that we chatted about your specific character that actually had a sexual health condition, right? And how she was communicating with her partner in order to get her fantasy needs met. And I thought that was so great because I work with people who have sexual health conditions, painful sex, or there's so many different things that can cause painful sex, or incontinence, which also affects our sex lives, or on the male side, erectile dysfunction, which is a real problem in the male population. 50% of men in their 50s have ED. And so it's very common. And so having characters that actually have these conditions is so beautiful. Do you want to talk on that a minute about the specific character?
Absolutely. So in my first book called Your Two Lips, the main character, the female main character, and side note, I write heterosexual characters are my main characters because I am cis woman heterosexual. So that's what I know the best. So that's what I feel comfortable writing since I write first person. But my books are certainly, information is certainly applicable to penis owners and vulva owners. Pleasing a penis and pleasing a vulva, you don't necessarily have to be in a heterosexual relationship to learn. But the main character has endometriosis, which is something that 6.5 million American women have endometriosis. And that's just in America, in the United States. It's much more worldwide, obviously. This is a disorder that impacts sexual pleasure. It impacts fertility. It's also related to our periods. It has to do with the uterus and the uterine tissue. And because of that, is something we don't talk about. We just don't talk about endometriosis that much. We don't talk about our periods that much. And this character, she ends up having to have a hysterectomy at 25. And so she's struggling with that. She's no longer going to be able to carry a baby. And that's something that, as a character, her archetype is a nurturer. So she really wants to have that experience in her life. And she is now exploring her sexuality because she's not had pleasurable sex. And she meets a man, and he is wonderful, and his experience has been the player, and now he meets this woman that he's really interested in, but she's a little complicated. And so they have to talk together and work together to get past some of her shame about her sex, her lack of experience with sex, or shame about, as a woman, she can't do this one thing that she feels like she was created to do. And while that's something we don't like to talk about as women, we want to be empowered deep down in the dark of the night. That is something that impacts her. She and the main character, the hero, her name is Emily, his name is Finn, and they have lovely conversations in bed about how to make him feel good and how to make her feel good. And Finn does a lot of research about she has a fantasy of having an orgasm in the missionary position, which sounds maybe trite, but for people living with endometriosis, the missionary position is one of the most uncomfortable, painful sexual positions. And so she's never had an orgasm in that position, and she wants to, and he figures out how to make that happen. So
I love that. And that is real life stuff. You know what I mean? Because not everybody has all the parts working exactly the way they're supposed to. And so having representation of somebody with a sexual health condition, and then also taking it the next step and having the partner to research and to try to make her fantasy a reality. Now that is a beautiful story. I love that. So I commend you for trying to broaden what we think of as protagonists, because it's not always a perfect body that we're dealing with. We all have issues, and we all need to figure out how we can enjoy the best sex of our lives. And as we get older, things change, and your energy is not the same, and the positions that you can do are not the same. So this is really something that continues for everybody. And if you want to have a beautiful sex life from beginning to end, it's something that you constantly need to be talking about and trying to figure out how you can really best enjoy it. That's amazing. How do you think? Go ahead. You want to jump in?
I was going to say, one of the things that's challenging about romance novels, or some people have said is challenging about romance novels, is the heroes they know what they're doing in the bedroom. They are in command and in control all the time. And I think one of the things that I really like about Finn in particular, and the other heroes in my books, is while they're sexually confident men, They recognize that they don't know everything. I do need to I need to ask some questions. I need to figure out this person's buttons and those kinds of things. And so I think that's what I'm really proud of my heroes. And I think they represent a more real man and really a more attractive man, what you're going to run into in the world. A man that is not going to know everything. They're not born knowing everything. We have to tell them what we like and what we don't like if we expect them to give it to us. So
Absolutely. And knowing what you like and what you don't like starts from within first, right? And then you have to be able to say what those things are. And then you have to have a person on the other side that is willing to accept that information, integrate it, and try and put it into practice. So it's a two-way street, right? But if you automatically assume that your partner knows what they're doing and they're going to take care of everything, that's really doing them a disservice too, because you can't assume that everybody knows what's going on. There's one thing that is confidence. Every single woman is different. What works for one may not work for the other. So really having these conversations is so key.
absolutely.
Are you in perimenopause or postmenopause and wondering about hormone replacement therapy? As a pelvic floor physical therapist, I help women to navigate this time of their lives. Did you know that 30% of our lives will be in menopause? It's important to try to strive for optimal levels of hormones in your body. What I use is Parlor Games. I use the Silky Peach Cream, and that's the estrogen cream. And I use the Vibrant Third, and that's the progesterone cream. And I cycle that throughout the month. You want to make sure that your levels remain optimal throughout your life so that you can enjoy vaginal health and an amazing sex life. So check out in the show notes the link to get your own today. How do you think listening, and you mentioned porn before and how it has its place in the entertainment world, and it's certainly titillating to look at, right? But it is not sex education. It's completely like the furthest thing from reality when it comes to sex, right? For so many
Absolutely.
different reasons. But how would you say that your romance novels can help people improve their sex lives?
I think the thing that we're talking about is helping to normalize some of those things that really are going to enhance your sex life, knowing that you can't just penetrate a woman 5 times and then expect her to have this explosive, magnanimous orgasm. That is almost a biological impossibility.
Exactly.
So it's a complete fantasy but it is a complete fantasy in the same way that the Millennium Falcon can fly. It's just a almost physical impossibility. I think romance novels right now are elevating that, just normalizing that discussion of it's okay to not know everything, to talk about what the person likes. Does this feel good? Does this not feel good? Do you like this? Do you not like this? Consent, super important. A lot of romance novels, particularly in some places, still have, oh, I'm going to give it to you. I know what you want. I'm going to give it to you. And that's titillating in its own way and has a place. But certainly there's much more romance novels are now starting to highlight consent and do you want this? Is this what you want? Let's just get this clear. I have a scene in my most recent book where they're in the truck. They've had a difficulty getting some alone time together in a private space. So they end up in the cab of his truck and she's given him the eyes and she's asked him to go there and do you have a condom? She's given a lot of clues and he just said, let me just be clear. What's happening here? I think I know, but I just want to be clear what's happening here. And then she shows him her body and he's fuck. And she's, yep, you got it. Bitch. They start. But it's that normalizing and even making it sensual and sexy to ask for consent and to make sure that you're both on the same page and everybody's on board with what's happening. And even the hero his name is Travis, the hero in that book, he says a couple of times, there's nothing sexier than a woman wanting you, a woman saying yes and maybe not being aggressive, but certainly giving that signs and hints, showing her body, saying what she wants. There's nothing sexier than a woman wanting you. And he is actually takes over at that point a little bit. He's dives in, but he makes sure he has the go ahead to do that. And I think making that sexy is important. And so romance novels can teach people how to do that, how to have a conversation like that, how to have a conversation about what people like. There's things called a yes, no, maybe list that is out in the world that people are using, where lots of different things, sexual activities, and you can each fill it out and compare them. So that I talk about that in my most recent novel, that the couple actually fills out the yes, no, maybe list and talks about what that means for them. Normalizing some of that behavior, normalizing how to send a sext. Is it okay? Is it okay if I send you something sexy? Will you show this to anybody else? To let that person know I won't show this to somebody else. And then all bets are off. You can how to sext with your partner. So just providing some examples and information more information is always going to make your sex life better.
100%. And I love that because you're actually modeling, your protagonists are actually modeling these conversations that in real life, we need to have these conversations. And a lot of times people are so shut down and embarrassed to even talk about sex, that let alone try and improve their sex lives in any way, because they're just so shut down and embarrassed about having these conversations. So the more that we can normalize these conversations, and that's really what this show is all about, trying to normalize these conversations so that we can enjoy our sex lives and have the best sex lives of our lives, right? And so I love that your books are also doing that very thing.
Exactly. And I love this show. You had a show recently about penis size.
Yes.
That was awesome. I love that show. And I'm probably going to steal a few tidbits for the next book that I'm writing. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah. Sure. No, I think that's something that's so important, is that we all, in romance novels, we assume that big dick, bigger is better. But your guest that day made a great point, and one that this is what I really want to emphasize possibly in my next book, is that if you have a more average size penis, you're not it's not as painful for your female partner or for your partner in general, and you can have sex more frequently. So sometimes having a big penis is not all it's cracked up to be. Putting that, and some of my characters have maybe larger than average, but they all talk about how it's not as great as it. They talk a lot about go slow, make sure it's good for her. It's not this automatic orgasm machine to have a big dick. I love that. Yeah, I love this show. I love what you're doing. I'm on board.
Yes. And you talked about a show that I did with Juliet and Kiara. And yes, and she talked about quote unquote boyfriend dick, right? And so women actually tend to choose men that have a little bit smaller of a penis for regular activity, right? But if they want to have a one night stand, they'll want a little bit larger because it's a one-time thing and you want to really feel it. You know? And maybe it'll cause damage. You're not going to see them the next day and want to have sex the next day. So it's a very interesting concept, right? But absolutely, size, it matters to a certain degree, of course. If you have a micro penis, then that's going to be an issue. And you're going to have to work with that and get lots of toys and whatnot to pleasure your partner. But yeah, having the biggest penis is not the most important thing. The most important thing is communication and how you try to satisfy your partner. And if you have somebody that is on the other side trying to satisfy you and vice versa, that is what we really want in terms of having a healthy sex life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's what's important.
Yes. I want to know how you get your ideas for sex scenes.
A couple of ways. I write what's called character-driven stories. So I start with the character's wounds, something that might have happened to them in childhood, not necessarily sexually related at all, just life and the lies that we sometimes tell ourselves. People always leave is a lie that we sometimes tell ourselves. And if a parent, sometimes people from divorced households feel this. People always leave. If you love somebody, they'll go away. They'll take your heart and break it. These are lies that we tell ourselves. And then I think about how would that impact somebody in their sex life, and what might they need to experience in their sex life and in their romantic relationship to help them heal from that wound. And so I think about that. Excuse me. So I think about that. And then I read myriad books from sex therapists. I have a master's degree in clinical psychology and worked at one time as a therapist. And so I'm always interested in people's wounds, and how to help them heal from that. And I've read, like I said, myriad books from sex therapists. And so I try to take some of those techniques, excuse me, that those sex therapists are talking about and teaching about and include those in the story. For example, with Finn and Emily, if you are in the missionary position and the man is laying flat over the woman, no, they're not going to get enough clitoral stimulation with penetration. But if the man is to raise up on his arms and position himself above her, the arc helps to get his pubic bone to push against her clitoris if he focuses on that, so the penetration can actually stimulate the clitoris in that position. So that's something that sex therapists talk about. And it's also what Finn does. He talks about how I read about this. I'm going to try this. Does that help? Oh, yeah, that feels great. I'm getting there. That's modeled in the romance novel. So that's where I get my ideas about what they're going to do in the steamy scenes. And then it just sort of, thinking about the character, it just evolves. They tell me what they're going to do. It sounds woo-woo, but it's actually true. It's certainly what they want their sex scene to look like. And I try to make them all somewhat different, somewhat unique. They're not all just 1, 2, 3 steps through different levels of physical intimacy. I really try to think about what would the character do in this situation, want in this situation. Sometimes they have sex against a wall. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they have sex at a more public area. Sometimes they don't, because not everybody is going to be into all the same things. Yeah.
Absolutely. And really, the sky's the limit with what you can create, because there are just so many possibilities sexually. So I definitely appreciate that you're adding all of this information from your background and all of the different things that you're reading to really create sex scenes that are also educational almost. So you can really take some information, and you talked about the clitoris and stimulating the clitoris. And 95% of women need external clitoral stimulation in order to orgasm. The missionary position that you mentioned before is actually not an easy position for a lot of women to climax in, because you need that external clitoral stimulation as well. So the fact that he, lifted his body up away from her and was able to get some pressure on the clitoris to help her, that's a great start. And then if you are in that lifted position, you could also probably introduce a little vibrator into that area more easily than if he was laying flat on you. Just picking apart the ideas and trying to make them realistic, because not a lot of women, and I know I myself, it's very rare for me to climax in that position.
And Finn actually does introduce a vibrator. He talks to her, he gives her a vibrator, and this is how we're going to use it. And she's excited and elated about that. But yeah, in that position, he is able to introduce a vibrator that really pumps up the clitoral stimulation and gets her there. Yeah.
That's awesome. And the fact that the man brings the toy into the bedroom too. Men should not be afraid of toys. A lot of times I hear stories about men feeling some kind of way about bringing a toy because they feel like their dick is supposed to do all the work. And as much as we love that part of your anatomy, we also love your mouth, and we love your hands, and we love a lot of other things too. Really trying to broaden people's perspectives of what sex can be. And the man bringing in that sex toy to help because he wants to please his partner. And this is the type of relationship that we want. If you are in a relationship with someone that doesn't want to please you, you need to really double think that relationship. And so these are the types of things that we want people to understand and want them to know about when they choose a partner, what they should be looking for sexually. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I 100% agree. It's important to think, to notice the partner wants your pleasure. I think it's also important to realize that, especially as women age, studies have shown men have the same testosterone levels. They have a certain testosterone level at puberty, and it stays relatively the same until their 70s. Women, our bodies are more complicated than that. We change and evolve, and what we find sexually pleasing or arousing, what stimulation that can get us to orgasm, that can change as we age. And even I have one of my other books is called Formula One Noelle. It's my Christmas book. She is a sex researcher. And so she talks a lot about, she meets her partner. They talk a lot about aging. She's doing some sex research on sex with people over 50. And one of the things that she talks about there is as we get older, penetration doesn't necessarily make it anymore. Like it's not necessarily what needs to happen anymore. It's more about the touch, more about using a toy on the clitoris. Some women may not be able to orgasm as they get older, but they want that connection and that touch and that satisfaction. Talking about oral, different techniques with oral, that technique trick that a lot of people talk about is spell something, like for the partner giving oral to a vulva, spell something with your tongue. Like if you don't know what to do with your tongue, spell something with your tongue and that you're just moving it around and that feels good. So introducing some of those things and normalizing and making it fun, some of those techniques that maybe we aren't comfortable with, but as we get older, we need to introduce into our sexual repertoire in order to have that satisfaction.
I love that tip. And it's funny because I am a physical therapist by trade. And one of the exercises that I teach an ankle patient to do is the ankle alphabet. And the big toe is the pen and it writes the whole alphabet. And doing that with your tongue, hey, that is an awesome idea. I love that tip. So on that note, I'm going to switch gears a little bit because we're running into the very end of the show. And I would like to introduce a role play. Okay. And so we talked a little bit about this before, but I am going to be the woman partner and you are going to be the male partner.
Okay.
And I am going to be bringing up a fantasy that I'd like to try with you. And then you're going to reciprocate with me. Does that sound good?
I'll try.
Okay. And the idea of this is just to model conversations around sex. And I think that's so important because a lot of people really have a hard time with these conversations. So, okay. And action.
Tell me your fantasy. Yeah. Tell me your fantasy. I want to know.
Okay. Yes. I was reading this book the other day and I'm a little shy to tell you what this is about, but I'm going to go ahead and do that. Let me first have a glass of wine.
Absolutely, baby. Here, let me pour it for you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, honey. This book involved a woman being tied up and blindfolded. And it had never really occurred to me until I read it, but it really got me hot and bothered. And I'm wondering if you would be open to exploring with me with a little bit of bondage and some sensory play.
Absolutely. If it's gonna get you off, yes, I'm definitely in. I have never done that before. You've never done that before either?
No, not at all.
What excites you about it? What do you think you'll like the most about it? Is it me touching you and you not knowing where I'm going to touch you? Or is it that you can't stop me if I'm doing something? Or what excites you about the idea of being tied up? Because I want to make sure I give you what you want.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So I think the blindfold part makes me think that it'll be like a surprise. So I'm going to not know exactly where you're coming from. And so I like the element of surprise. And I also think it might heighten my senses. And being tied up, I just won't be able to touch you. And it'll be all about me and all about me receiving pleasure because I won't be able to give you any pleasure. So I just like the idea of me being the center of attention.
Oh, baby, if I'm giving you pleasure, you're giving me pleasure. I assure you. I think I have some ties I'm not interested in wearing anymore, and they would be soft. But first thing, I want to make sure we have a word. I want to make sure we have a word that if I'm doing something, you can stop me. I want you to be able to relax into the fantasy, but I also want to know that I'm not going to risk doing something you don't want because I don't want to hurt you. That would be awful for me. That would be the worst thing. So let's make sure we have a safe word that you can say to make me stop, or you can always just say no or stop and I will stop. But wow, I'm really excited about the opportunity to explore this with you and to be the first to do
Oh,
this with
yes,
you.
me too. And I love the idea that you brought up safe words. So why don't we just do the stoplight, red, yellow, and green, and you can check in with me throughout and I can tell you where I'm at.
Maybe that's so sexy. The fact that you've thought about this and you want to do this with me. Yeah, I'm really getting hot. Thank you so much for sharing this with me. I'm excited. Let's get started.
End scene. You make a great man, I have to say. That was so much fun. I really appreciate you going for it fully. And so great job with that. That was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
On that note,
That was a first.
hey, sometimes you have to try something new.
That's right. That was the first. I'll have to keep thinking about that as I write my male characters. So
Excellent. So I want to make sure that my listeners can find you. Where can we find you?
my website is ChristinaBraver.com, and that's it's Christina with a C and Braver, Braver. So ChristinaBraver.com. And I am also, my books are available on Amazon. And so you can find me there on my author page there with Amazon.
Excellent. And I want everyone out there to pick up your phones right now. And if you love this episode as much as I did, and I had so much fun recording it today, go ahead and copy it and send it to somebody that you think might also enjoy it, because this is how podcasts grow and we spread the love. And so please go ahead and share that with somebody right now. And please also review the show, because that is how podcasts grow. So I really appreciate all my listeners out there. And I want to say too that you can visit me on pleaseme.online. Again, all of my podcasts are on the website, as well as my shameless interviews where I've been interviewed on other shows, and all of my webinars are there, as well as a beautifully curated store of sex toys and lubes and books, etc. So please go onto my website and check that out, and feel free to support the show if you'd like. Again, thank you so much, Christina, for being on the show today. This was so much fun.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I forgot to mention, I'm on Instagram and Facebook as Christina Braver Romance. And I try to post about romance novels and sex positivity there. And thank you for mentioning lube. We didn't get a chance to talk about lube, but it's so important to do your research there too. So thank
Hallelujah
you.
to that too. On that note, we're going to church today. On that note, until next time.
Thank you.
During COVID, I gave up 3 things. One was not wearing makeup every day. Another thing was that I stopped working for other people. And so hence my podcast and hence my private practice, Inspire Health Physical Therapy. And the third thing I gave up during COVID was wearing a bra. Cakes is an incredible product that I've been using so that I don't have to wear a bra all the time, but I can look like I have a bra on. And what it does is it just covers up the little nipple show that you have going through your clothes, and it allows your clothes to fit you seamlessly and smoothly. And it is a beautiful product, and they are so much more comfortable to wear. It's so important to give your body time without a bra, because just like any other brace, if you're wearing an ankle brace or a knee brace and you wear it all the time, it's going to cause atrophy around that joint. And the same goes for a bra. If you're wearing a bra all the time, it's going to also cause weakness in your pectoralis muscles. And the pectoralis muscles are the muscles that help you to lift your breasts. And if they get weak, your breasts will sag. So wearing cakes is really great for decreasing sagging. So I just wanted to come on here and tell you to get your cakes. And I wanted to share mine with you. Today I have the triangle ones on, and I'm going to show you how easy they are. They adhere without adhesive to the skin naturally. And you can see they come in different colors. So make sure you check out the link below and get your cakes today.